Welcome to the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Mike DeHaan and Dan Austin. From wins, losses, horror stories, and tactics for optimizing your business, Mike and Dan take a real, uncensored deep dive into the ins and outs of running a full-time real estate investment and wholesaling business.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 5 of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. We are coming to you here fresh off of a business meetup / mastermind that we went to down in Florida with our mastermind group that we're in, which is Ryan Dossey's Create Cash Flow program. It's kind of what we use to kickstart our business, and it's been great for us to sort of keep going with that and building our network and sort of like learning the process that everyone around the country is doing. And this particular meetup we went to was kind of like a reunion meetup, I guess. So it was like all the people that have been in for a little while, and the vast majority of the people there have had some pretty solid success in their business. So it was almost like I don't want to say like the all-star team, because there was some big people that were missing out. But for the most part, it wasn't like newbie stuff, like you see at some of these meetups that you go to. Everyone there was pretty established. I had a good time. I always find that after stuff like that, you get a little bit of like the church camp syndrome when you come back. You're just so feel like enlightened, like motivated and ready to start jamming on some new stuff. I don't know how you feel, Dan, but I'm definitely been getting after it these first couple days.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I crashed for when I got home, but I fell asleep in my daughter's bunk bed on the bottom bunk as I was putting her to bed, and got a good night's sleep after travel, which was good. But yeah, it definitely makes you reevaluate your goals, right? But also just kind of reflect back on where we've come from and all that stuff. But had a nice plane ride home to kind of lay out like, what am I going to do this week to, implement.
Yeah, that's funny. You crash like that. A lot of people, when you go to like meetups like this, it's funny because I feel like some people go there and they like try to stick with their schedules. Like there was definitely those people that would kind of dip out for the night, and like, as soon as like the workshops or whatever were done, they would go back to their hotel or Airbnb or whatever. But I mean, I think the main value of a lot of that stuff comes from like the after hours socializing and stuff and the networking that you do, and I think that sort of goes for any sort of event like that, right? I mean, we had some long days. We were pretty much out the door every day at like 8 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock. We were getting back at like midnight, 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And the last night we were there, we were out until like 11:30, and then we were at the hotel. We were at the hotel for like until like 4 hours that we paid for.
Yeah. We might as well have got an hourly hotel at that point.
I know, right? No shit. But I mean, that was at least walking distance to the airport.
Yeah. It's a ton of value after hours, and it's not like we're just literally talking to people, right? It wasn't like anything crazy, like we're going to all these events or anything like that. It was just like hanging out, talking about stuff, getting to know people a little bit more, personally, but also more about their businesses. And I would say that was for sure the best value for me after hours.
100%. And something I always find really interesting with that too is, there's such a wide demographic of individuals, like we have, this dude Uchenna with was he a baby back Rehabs out of St. Louis.
I love that,
it's one of my favorite names he had there. But he's ex college football player, 23 years old. He's a Nigerian heritage. He's I guess we say African American or black, because like technically he's has a Nigerian background. I don't know. Either way, he's like big.
I go with black.
I mean, yeah, that's what he is. But, he's like 6'5", jack dude, like just very standout.
Don't undersell it. Don't undersell. The dude is buff and sexy.
He's buff for sure. It's so interesting. So you see him, and then you have like some of the other investors that are like, sort of middle-aged people, sort of like started this whole thing, like, different sort of upbringings. But then you talk to them and you realize that everyone kind of has like the same sort of challenges, the same sort of areas looking to grow, the same sort of goals. And it's kind of funny looking back, because you look at like just the whole group as a whole, and you're like 99% of these people would never talk to each other if it wasn't for our mutual interest in developing a business this way.
Totally.
unless it was like accidental, right? Like I don't even know what situation that would necessarily occur, in the wild. But in this, not only do these people interact, but they all become kind of friends, and it wouldn't
Mhm.
be unheard of to think of less people keeping in contact, in the future going forward, which is, I always think is pretty cool about, these sort of niche businesses like this. I feel like that's a pretty common situation.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I have been part of other masterminds, and maybe this one is probably a little unique to that, though. Doesn't feel like we've had that same connectedness to people. Could
Yeah.
be Ryan, could be just the group of people we're with, but that definitely helps.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a certain personality trait that, a certain personality traits that people who are running a business like this kind of all have, because it's not like this is a difficult business. It's a very like problem solving heavy business,
Mhm.
and it is one that requires a lot of work. And I think that, if someone wanted an easier business, there's definitely easier ways to make money, but at the same time, I feel like those ways are less guaranteed and have less, upside, especially in terms of assets you can accumulate. Like you want to go and you want to start like an online brand or something like that. It's like, sure, you can make a lot of cash doing that, but you're not necessarily going to be having hard assets outside of your business, and also too, that it's going to be a lot more competitive at the end of the day to like really scale that than it is, when you're actually buying these properties at a discount. And it's funny, I was talking to our buddy Aaron from San Antonio about that. He sent me a video the other day about like how to, I think it was called like how to build $100 million business.
Mm.
And, we kind of exchanged text. And I was like, yeah, it's not really possible in real estate, unless it's like a really extreme sort of black swan situation almost. Like, to make a business is making, 9 figures a year. But I think the biggest difference between businesses that can scale that way and like a real estate business, especially an investment business where you're holding properties, is, wealth is kind of guaranteed. You're very much more in control of the outcome of that. And you're not necessarily like reliant on, I don't know, like a mass amount of consumers are following or things like that, right? You
Hmm.
buy a bunch of properties at 50% of 50% discount, you're gonna build some wealth. Like there's no no question for that,
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, building $100 million business in real estate. Not that it's not doable, but that's not really the goal either for most people in
Yeah,
our demographic. People that are looking to do what we're doing. It's like, what are you going to do with $100 million business? From a freedom standpoint, too, it seems like a lot of folks in our group are looking for freedom, not necessarily freedom from working, but just freedom from all the bullshit that might be involved
yeah.
in $100 million business, right?
Exactly. And that is something else you see really commonly with real estate too. I mean, how many conversations over this past weekend were about freeing up time or optimizing more time to spend with family or their spouses or with their hobbies or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
and that's always something else too that I realize is you don't actually need to be making that much money to be able to do that. You know,
You don't need to be
I,
making any money to do it, right?
that's true.
I mean, let's be
That's true.
serious about that. It's just that,
Yeah.
and it's all, I think it's in the back of everybody's head is like, why do I think I need more money to
Hmm.
enjoy this? Because you really don't.
Yeah. Yeah. That is
It's
true.
hard though, because I like nice things.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, it's the way you want that to look, right? Like, right? Because you're right. You don't need any money to do that. But if you're comfortable living a um, life with a little bit more scarcity, then that's fine. I mean, some people do that. That's one of the reasons I think that you see a lot of, especially younger people, doing like the van life, or
God, don't even tell
remodeling
me
a
about
whole
the van life. God, I mean, it
I mean,
sounds fun, but
I mean, does it? I think it sounds ridiculous. But you see that they can go and they can live in this van and just travel around for very minimal cost. And allows you to have that lifestyle, right? Which is cool.
mhm,
Whether like I think a lot of them will look back 15 years from now and be like, shit, with all the exponential growth that happened to the economy, I kind of missed the boat there.
mhm,
But at the same time, I don't know. They'll have memories and stuff, which is cool. But I think for all of
yeah,
us, like the goal is being able to make those memories while also making good money at the same time,
yep,
and building those systems, those assets to make money while you sleep is kind of the
yep.
biggest thing all of us are shooting for.
Yeah, it made me think like while you're saying that, like the one of the goals of mine is like, how do I remember like the highs, like the good points? Because like as I reflect back on my life, you talk about like living in a van and enjoying that, and they're gonna make a lot of memories. But for me, a lot of the struggle and strife has been the ones that I remember the most for some reason. And I laugh at them now. You think about when you're first starting out in life and like how simple it was. And like you had your first apartment or you're living on your own, whatever, paying your own bills, and you didn't have a lot of excess income. And for me personally, I look back and I enjoy that time. But then like if you're working so hard, you forget about like these high points of like, hey, we had a 6-figure month. And like, where were you when we had a 6-figure month for the first time? Like, I don't remember. Right. You know what I mean? And so it's like making sure for me that I'm taking the time to enjoy those big successes.
See, I think the main reason I remember is because it always seems to be when I'm on vacation.
Right. Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
Literally
Yeah.
every huge month we've had, I've been gone. The first one I was in Utah. After that I was in Florida. And then this past month has been a huge month, and I had multiple trips. I was in Egypt for the first part, and then I was in Texas and Florida for the second half of it. So, I mean, that's kind of the key right there, I guess, is I just need to be traveling at all times.
The wheels keep turning, man. The wheels keep turning.
I know. I think you're completely right in what that looks like from a mindset standpoint. I'm not sure. From a life standpoint, I mean, that's a big reason that I do like to travel, because otherwise it's really easy to sort of get into like the sort of mental state of like everything's on autopilot and it's just moving. Whereas I don't know, like for me, because I've traveled so much in my life, it always tends to be like a checkpoint, so like everything kind of goes, between, I don't know if that sounds like humble braggy sort of thing here, but in between like my trip to Iceland versus like my trip to New Zealand, which was like 6 months later, I don't really know what happened in between that period of time, but like, those two things stand out in my memory very vividly, even though they're about 6 months apart.
Right. Yeah.
And then like, even this year, it's like, went to Hawaii one year, and then I went to, Egypt beginning of October. I went to Hawaii in like July. The whole period of time in between that, like, I don't know, we did stuff, but I can't really pinpoint exactly what happened in between that,
Yep.
But I think that is also kind of a good thing that comes from this business too, is you kind of get those checkpoints as well from some of the deals that we have that are super memorable, and they kind of stick with you and they make it, a little bit more tangible. Because I feel like if you had a business and you were just selling like thousands and thousands of widgets, and none of them really stand out to you anymore, at that point it would be, that autopilot, I think is what a lot of people sort of fear. And I think that's what causes a lot of anxiety in a lot of humans. That's why you see it in a corporate job. You go to the same office every day, you sit in the same desk, you talk to the same people, you eat lunch at the same time, you do the same task. And the next thing you know, 30 years have gone by.
Totally. Yeah.
Right.
That's the risk, right?
That
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
and I think going out on, in your business doesn't necessarily prevent that from happening. So I think it's, there's a lot you can do to sort of change that state of mind. But.
Yeah. That's what, like, it's funny talking about like corporate America and stuff, and talking to people like, oh man, that seems like a lot of work. Or that seems like a lot of risk investing in real estate. It's like, no, man, you're taking the way bigger risk than me. Right. Like just sitting here doing the exact same thing every single day, like day in and day out, not aspiring to do great, but aspiring to be average. Like average seems to continue to lower as time goes on. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is a massive risk.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I think the trade-off for people, I think that people, they tend to confuse risk with discomfort. Right. Because like you look at how we do business, and I guess, sure, we're taking risks when we buy these properties and we do these deals, but at the same time, I mean, not really, because we're buying them with such big spreads. And then like the downside is limited at the end of the day. It's like, let's say we buy a house for $100,000 and we get into it and we're like, oh my God, this is such a disaster. You have to sell it for a loss. Our downside is really only $100,000,
Right.
Especially if it's worth more once it's fixed up, which how we buy stuff, it always is. So, that's pretty limited when you look at it that way. Whereas like, I think that the comfort, like that would be such an uncomfortable situation that most people can't even fathom. I mean, I don't know. I guess I've had, a couple deals where I've lost money. I think the closest sort of discomfort maybe you've had, I might be projecting here, is when we had the 6th Ave property, right? And we're going into that thing, we're like, this is a money pit and we need to get the hell out of this property. And like, that's a terrible feeling. Like, I don't know, I was losing sleep over that, especially that day that I had to call you and tell you that we were going to spend $30,000 more than we thought. I was like,
Yeah, I mean that was definitely discomfort, but even by then, like you and I had both had things under our belt to where it was like we knew at the end of the day, like it's gonna be okay, right?
Exactly.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I definitely get what you're saying, and every time we step into rehab, there's always a little bit of discomfort because you don't necessarily know what's on the other end all the time,
Totally.
and so it gets you're going through challenges and like I personally just hate spending money on things. And I just kind of signed up to spend like another, I don't know, $10,000 to $12,000 on our Airbnb that I knew I had to spend, but I didn't want to spend it. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Getting all the exterior dialed in and all that, but it's worth it.
Did you bite the bullet and just get all the siding and stuff figured out?
Yeah. I got a bunch of other stuff. Yeah. A lot of stuff figured out on the deck and the paint and the landscaping and all that stuff, which it's like, oh, we could get away without doing it, but it's like the inside looks sick. I was down there and I got some photos. It looks good. It's definitely, I must say, my best design I've ever done before. So I'm pretty pumped.
Nice. Yeah, we'll have to go get some good footage down there, and we can throw up a YouTube video or something.
Yeah.
Some before photos and some after footage, because that one's come along far. That place, it's funny. I was looking at photos kind of recently. That place was really crappy when we bought it.
Yeah, dude. And like,
So-
you remember when I told you we don't buy like 100-year-old houses and then we get into it? I'm like, oh, this thing doesn't look 100 years old. And then I found out it's 100 years old.
I know.
But structurally it was okay. I mean, we did have to jack it up a little bit, but that didn't really cost us much. But yeah, it's come a long ways. I mean, no smells. I mean, just everything top to bottom looks super good. I'm pumped about it.
Yeah, and I think the 100-year-old houses. I mean, it's like good neighborhood 100 years old versus like
Yeah.
six is like bad neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like they threw
Yeah.
that they threw that up to like throw some industrial workers in the 1890s in there. Where
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
the
Well, in low income neighborhoods, right? Like, so this
yeah,
isn't a higher income neighborhood. So people over the decades were able to take care of it. They had some
sure.
affluence potentially. Where, yeah, that, yeah, Sixth Ave is definitely not an affluent area. Maybe one time it was, but it hasn't been for the last 90 years.
Was it ever? I don't think it was. I think it's
I don't
always
know.
kind of been crappy.
I mean, I like to think like 100 years ago when they build a house that it's like, oh, that's just kind of a nice neighborhood.
It was even worse back then 'cause they didn't have any like standards or rules they had to follow.
Huh.
That's why there's all those houses in like the Midwest that have like lead paint and like all the
Yeah.
project neighborhoods that are poisoning people.
Right.
Still.
But I mean, you go talk to 9 out of 10 flippers, they're not following the standard either.
That's true. That's true. Except for us, we're always 100% by the standards, by the
Absolutely.
books. Everything is licensed and
Bonded and
inspected and everything.
yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's funny. Yeah. So I guess what are some of the big action steps you took from the mastermind though? Anything good you're gonna start applying moving forward?
So I think before like even action steps, there's just like a couple comments to make is like just networking, the power of networking and like how good it feels to do that
Mm-hmm.
and getting around those like-minded people that are struggling with the same struggles you are and reminding you that.
Yeah.
And then for us as like a business, because they're within the group we were in, like there's some people maybe a little bit newer, not newbies, but they're still, when I look back to where we were 12 months ago, maybe 18 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other people that are just kicking butt and taking names, right? Like, and so it, A, motivated me to go further, B, but also kind of like have some gratitude for where we've come and be like, wow, we've come a long ways as a business, and kind of chuckling about the amount of work that those newer folks have in front of them, the
Yeah.
challenge of that. And I'm confident most of them will kind of get over that, but it's a lot of work to get to where we're at. Right. And
It
just
is.
taking that moment to be like, wow, we have come a long way, and look at all the revenue and wealth we've created over this period of time, even though it never feels like it, because you're just like on to the next one, on to the next one. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would say like action steps was like one, I kind of pushed my goals out like a little higher than they were before, just because I was like, what, I got to set my goals. I thought were pretty aspirational, but I moved them out a little bit farther just from like passive income and those sorts of things.
Let's hear them on the spot.
So like my near term goal right now is like 30K a month.
And
It went
passive?
from 20. Yeah. It went from 20 to 30.
Okay.
That was like the major one I moved. I wasn't so worried too much about like overall net worth moving. Obviously that will come with what we're doing. But that was kind of the big one I thought about because, I saw Ryan's Ferrari And although now I don't think I want a Ferrari anymore because I don't know what I would do with it, but like just, you get to be around these folks that you're like, oh shoot, you're doing that. Like, okay, if you can do it, I know I can do it. And there's a path to it. And so kind of removing those roadblocks in front of those goals. So I was like kind of one of those more tangible goals that I just moved the goalpost on, which it's easy to do, but
So in your mind, does that all have to come from like rental cash flow, or would you like,
no.
let's say that we had the wholesale business so dialed that like your involvement was a couple hours a month? Would that count?
No, that's different goals, but it also doesn't have to just come from real estate, right? I'm expanding my mindset on like how that can come, right? As you know,
I'm not.
just some other business investments and looking at that sort of stuff. So that was like my purely passive goal, which might be, crazy, but that's kind of what I want.
It's not
And then,
crazy. People do that shit all the time.
right. I mean, and thinking where we came from when we started this, like it's significantly increased already. And so like, if we just be average, it's going to increase over the years and continue to grow. So, but then, yeah, I have goals for, the wholesaling business of what like income, like I can take home from that too, because I think that's big for me looking forward in the future is like that, getting that cash flow so that I can continue to reinvest it. So that base grows. Cause what you talk about people like the van life, is like, I think folks living off of their principal, the cash flow off of their principal, but never being able to grow their principal is not what I'm really into.
I think you're assuming that those people have principal.
Good point. Yeah. But I mean, like, so you say, you follow the fire folks and all that sort of stuff. And they're like, I've got 500,000 in my 401k. We're good to go. And 4% of that, I can easily live on that because I'm frugal. It's like, yeah, but how are you growing that principal other than just it growing with the market? Like I want to exponentially grow it, which means you got to continue to add to it. And so that's where the active income kind of comes in for me.
For sure. Okay. So do you have a revenue goal for the investment business?
For our business?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
What is it? I want to hear it.
So yeah, no, I'm not being coy. Sorry. I didn't know what you're talking about at first, but for me, like next year, 2022 is 350,000 profit, for me, 350 for you.
For
So
you
700, yeah, for $700,000 profit, so that's a near-term goal. So I'm not, you have these like aspirational goals. That's like a near-term goal that can easily be done in a sense, like it's going to take us to push hard, but looking at what, we've created last year, this year, it seems doable as long as we continue to grow and do what we're doing and stay at the momentum we're at now. We wouldn't really have to grow too much to get that, but it's, to me, that's like, yeah, that would work out great.
Sweet. Yeah, I like it.
What about you? Did you change your goalposts at all?
Yeah, a little bit. So, I mean, for me, my like I'm a lot more on the acquisition side of the business. So a lot of my stuff was kind of focused on that. I mean, I was going over our revenue and stuff as well. We're probably gonna be just short of 7 figures this year, in terms of revenue. Like I count like some of our cash out refi stuff in that as well, because it is cash that comes back our way. It's not like revenue, but I mean, we kind of treat it that way, right?
Yeah.
We had a couple of big ones. So we're going to be just short of 7 figures this year. And so my goal for next year is to double that and do 2 million revenue between flips, wholesales, cash out refis. And if we hit that, I mean, we'll both be able to pull your number, no problem.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, because our typical costs per deal and everything, like it will increase a little bit as we bring on more staff and more systems, but it's never going to be like, 50% profit. I mean, like our profit right now is like 7 or 8x, I think, to our typical operating expense. So, I mean, if you do 2 million divided by 8, like, what is that?
Like 2.5. Like 2.5.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So like you look like, what's an eighth of $2 million? I didn't actually run that number. But that's essentially what our operating expense will be. And most of the rest of that should be, times divided by 8, 250,000, right, to run it for the year. So that means that we should be at like, I better be a little bit higher to run. So that should be like 1.6 in profit probably. So if we could pull that, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, me too. Like that would be fantastic. And it's not like, oh, that would be nice. It's like we could do that. We just have to keep going. And like that was like the other stuff, like the tactical stuff, like as I thought about seeing some of the software stuff people were talking about and really optimizing our business. And you and I are already trying to do that, but like, how can we continue to implement things that make it less and less difficult for our staff to run the
Mhm.
business?
For sure. Yeah. And that was a big part of everything for me as well. Was my goals of getting our systems and everything and my time sort of blocked enough in the business that I don't have to be as reactive all the time, and having everything sort of processed out that our staff can
Mm-hmm.
kind of do what they need to do. And only really need to interject for like, I guess, like final approvals. And then, for like tough decisions that are kind of like outside the ordinary, like the guys want to call me to figure out what to do when our seller gets kidnapped. That's fine. He is alive, by the way. They found
It's
him.
good
He
to
was missing
hear.
for 5 days, but he's there and he's moving again. So I hopefully we're gonna get that one finished up here pretty soon. But yeah, like being able to only have to get involved with those sort of things. And then a big thing that I'm looking towards is getting another form of horizontal income set up that's sort of in tangent to our business. So, we've talked about setting up a fund and getting, lending or syndication set up on the side. And I think that is something that I want to look toward. And as a hard number on my goal sheet, I want to see if we can help raise $5 million next year from people that we can use towards that, which
Yeah.
like it sounds like a lot, and like that thought of having that sort of freaks me out, but at the same time, like I don't think it would be that difficult if we really push towards that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we definitely could raise the money. I mean, $1 million would be no problem, right?
Totally.
And
Yeah.
then going from there, it's you start getting some headwinds and stuff like that. I don't
Yeah.
think it'd be too much of a problem. I think the key will be like the timing of that, because I know like distracting to do that
Hmm.
versus like focusing on our business to get it to where we can do that, right? Because it's
For
always a
sure.
lot of work, a lot more work than we always underestimate the work that's necessary. But like that's definitely, I love that idea, and I think it would be super cool to be able to do that because we're smart enough to do it, right?
Yeah.
We network enough to be able to raise that capital,
Yeah.
and we
And
have
it,
enough people to lend to that we could probably do really well.
For sure. And I think that's kind of like the next iteration for a lot of real estate investors when you get tired of like doing the rehabs, but you still
Hmm.
want to make money off of like that asset class or like that sort of
Hmm.
niche, then you start lending on it and other people can do
Yeah.
the dirty work and you can basically just profit
Yep.
off of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
but
think that was like a takeaway too, like not necessarily just raising a fund, but just like the ideas of like being the lender,
mhm.
whether that's just the seller financing pieces or like we're doing, we're working on a deal right now to sell to one of our tenants actually on and finance a loan for them. And like that sort of model too, where, yeah, you're still collecting passive income, but you're doing it in a different way, right? And just that whole model of debt and lending and all that seems super, super fruitful going forward and all that
Yeah,
stuff. So,
yeah, I think so. Especially, I think it's going to become more sort of common too as I mean, it's kind of like a weird position to be as like the wealth gap grows, and I mean, we're already on that upper end of that, if we're being completely honest, right? And
sure.
sort of seeing, you know, that there's going to be people that are going to struggle to be able to afford homes and those sort of things. And, I think that a great situation, this is where Ryan's at right now too, is he buys houses, he makes them extremely nice, owns them outright, and then sells them to like somebody on owner finance who can't necessarily get a bank loan, but like wants to have a nice place. And I
Yep.
think that there will be a lot of area to make money that way, but also too to sort of like help with the situation that's occurred due to like all the rapid inflation and everything that we
Hmm.
started to see that's caused these housing prices to skyrocket. And for all of a
Yep.
sudden, there's going to be less and less people that can afford to buy a property.
Hmm.
Um, so, there's just a lot of ways to, have money, but not necessarily need to be a dickhead about that for everyone that isn't quite as fortunate.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's just good. I mean, I agree with you. There's going to be a lot more opportunity for that. And I remember when we were first looking at buying properties together and we're like, oh man, what if we started doing like lease to own? And like, we didn't really find any real properties that worked for. We just didn't have the foresight to do that. And
Mhm.
really wasn't like a big model, like at least in our hometown. I know there's a lot more of that in other parts of the country, but even with just the way people are generating income, like that are doing
Mhm.
okay, like whether you're an
Yeah,
entrepreneur, you're working in the gig economy, like banks won't give you a loan.
I
They
know.
just won't. You could make $200,000 a year, you can't get a loan. Or you have some weird bad credit issue that maybe popped up from COVID, right? Like you got laid off and kind of got screwed, evicted, or lost your house or whatever it is. you're going to need some way and some method to do it. And the banks aren't going to be the ones to do it.
For sure.
It's going to be us, the little man holding up America.
I mean, honestly, you said that slightly sarcastically, but that's so true. I mean,
right.
As things go on, I think that kind of like I think generationally too, is a lot of us that are like younger entrepreneurs sort of veer away from the crony capitalism, and the bigger businesses get more and more sort of in the weeds with whatever the hell they're going to do. That's what's going to ultimately happen, is like those that are having success but aren't like crazy big and have some more strict ethics are going to be the ones that are kind of providing the opportunities and leading the way for everyone else. So,
yep.
Cool. All right. I think that's a good place to stop there. I know you got your meeting to run away to here as well, Dan. So if you wouldn't mind going and leaving us a review and subscribing, that's always great. And then if you want to follow us some more, you can find us on socials at Collecting Keys Podcast. We have a website that's kind of rough right now, but it's coming together. We're having it made, collectingkeyspodcast.com. You can follow me directly on social at Mike_invests. You can follow Dan at InvestormanDan. I guess we're both on Instagram. You can hit us up on the DMs there. Follow us, see what we're doing. And thanks so much, guys, and see you next Wednesday.
Yep. See you guys.
Thanks for listening. Please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And check us out at collectingkeyspodcast.com for tips and guides on starting your own real estate investment and wholesaling business.